Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Johnson with the Employee Assistance Program with Parkview Health, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Mary Atear, who's an employee assistance and student assistance therapist through our Parkview Health programming. And Mary, I know you and I have had a long career of connecting back and forth, and I feel fortunate today to have this conversation. In the age of COVID-19, we have some special stressors that we're dealing with. And I wondered if you could get us started with a short conversation about what are some of those unique stressors and, what are you seeing in your counseling practice?
One of the most unique stressors to this time is that we're all stuck at home. And for students, that is a completely different environment. They left home for college and now they're back home. And so there are stresses related to that. And for the rest of us, working from home is very difficult because the boundaries of home versus work are blurred. And then, of course, for people with children, all the added responsibilities all at once are very stressful.
And I know that when we have that conversation with some folks, whether we're doing that therapy through an alternate format versus face-to-face, we often see folks that are experiencing stress and stress triggers. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what a trigger was in kind of a generic kind of sense, and maybe what that means in the age of COVID.
Well, a trigger can be internal or external, and it basically is a cue to go back to a coping mechanism. For somebody who does have a substance abuse problem, an external trigger could be a bottle of alcohol. It can also be a person. Internal triggers are feelings, thoughts, and those are particularly related to stress because that is an internal feeling. And what happens when we feel stress, we go back to old ways of coping typically. And if those old ways of coping are not healthy, it's hard to redirect oneself to new, healthier ways.
That's helpful to kind of think through this language. And, I'm holding my coffee near me because I know for one, I get in my thinking and my overthinking and my worried brain. And if I've watched too much news or I've listened to too much narrative about what's happening or going to happen, I can quickly get full of fear, and then that prevents me from doing my job or interacting with the people that I need to be present to. And so I wondered if there were any tips, so to speak, that you have for helping to ground people, whether they're being triggered by food, substances, or alcohol, or screen time, or even old patterns of anger.
Right.
Do you have any tips for folks that are struggling with some of these things?
Well, your mindfulness practices are a wonderful way of coping, just staying present, doing what we can to stay in the moment, because usually those feelings that are triggered are having to do with what ifs. And if we just stay anchored to the present moment, that is one way of grounding and anchoring oneself and being able to breathe in the moment and calm down.
I really like that you use the word anchor. And I know, like in our recovery work, we talk about a 30-day token or a 90-day token or a 1-year token, an anchor to ground us in the reality of recovery.
It's important to not end up wound into the emotion. And by the same token, not pushing it away or denying it. That's the naming part. When you do feel overwhelmed with any kind of emotion or craving, it's important to be in the present and to recognize it and to name it, so you don't push it away or deny it, because it will come back. So name it, understand this is how I'm feeling, and then distract. Then do something to move beyond it, not by denying it or pushing it away, but to move past it through distraction. Maybe going outside is always very good to get fresh air and a little exercise. But doing crossword puzzles or jigsaw puzzles, things that are different and can distract from the thoughts that can feel overwhelming.
I really like how you've said that, because I think sometimes when we talk about mindfulness, people think, well, I've got to take a yoga class, which is a wonderful form of mindfulness. But at the same time, if I'm savoring doing a puzzle, if that's enjoyable and soothing to me, then that becomes a bit of anchoring, or that slow, gentle walk outside and noticing the breeze, the wind, the birds. When we meet with folks, sometimes they're having trouble anchoring hope for the future, and yet we know that the practice of gratitude sometimes is very helpful. And so, could you say a few things about gratitude?
Yes, absolutely. Practicing gratitude is very helpful, a very important way of basically rewiring your thinking, your mind, so that instead of going from one negative thought to the next, which we can get in a pattern of doing so, bringing in gratitude brings in a shift in our thinking and basically helps us to be more positive, remain a little more optimistic. I encourage my students and others that I see to practice maybe keeping a gratitude journal, just listing 3 things every day that you're grateful for. And they don't have to be big things. It can be things like a warm cup of coffee. You know, we take things for granted. We take our coffee in the morning for granted. But if we stop and think about how grateful I am to have this nice tasting warm coffee, it makes that shift.
And maybe that's a good place for us to kind of end today, Mary, is the notion of gratefulness. I'm grateful that there's therapists out there like you that are meeting with people that are struggling, that are available and adapting. You know, we're in a world that's constantly changing, and we're in it together, and we're coping the best we can. There's a common humanity. All of us are suffering, and having a bit of gratitude in terms of how we are going to make it and support each other in the path is helpful, I think, too. So thank you so much for joining me on this conversation today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks, Mary.
Take care.